The year is 2024. For over a century, the world has largely avoided the cataclysmic devastation of a global conflict on the scale of the two world wars. While the 20th century bore witness to two of the deadliest conflicts in human history, the 21st century has, thus far, been marked by relative peace among the great powers. This period of relative peace has allowed for unprecedented economic growth, technological advancement, and globalization, bringing people and nations closer than ever before. However, beneath the surface of this interconnected world, a complex web of geopolitical tensions, economic anxieties, and ideological divides has been steadily growing. Like tectonic plates grinding against each other, these forces threaten to rupture the delicate balance of power, potentially plunging the world into a conflict of unimaginable proportions. The very forces that have propelled humanity forward, globalization, technological innovation, and the pursuit of power, now also present the greatest risks to our collective future. The world watches with bated breath as these forces gather momentum, threatening to shatter the fragile peace. The question is no longer if but when this delicate balance will tip, and what form this conflict will take. Will it be a sudden and explosive confrontation or a slow and insidious erosion of global order? The global landscape of the 21st century is vastly different from that of the 20th. The unipolar world, dominated by the United States, is giving way to a multipolar system.
China is challenging the United States' position as the world's sole superpower. This power shift is about ideology and influence. The US model of liberal democracy is being challenged by China's state capitalist system.
The struggle for global dominance is now being waged in cyberspace and outer space. The rise of China is part of a larger trend, the diffusion of power away from traditional state actors. The relationship between the United States and China is arguably the most consequential geopolitical dynamic of the 21st century. For decades, the two countries were bound together by a complex interplay of economic interests and strategic considerations. China's rapid economic growth, fueled by access to Western markets and technology, allowed it to rise from the ashes of Maoist isolation to become the world's second-largest economy.
The United States, eager to integrate China into the global order, saw this growth as beneficial, believing that economic liberalization would inevitably lead to political opening. However, this optimistic vision has become increasingly untenable in recent years. China's economic rise has been accompanied by a more assertive foreign policy, one that seeks to challenge the United States' hegemony in Asia and beyond. From the South China Sea to the African continent, China is projecting its power and influence, building military bases, securing access to resources, and forging new partnerships. This expansionism has alarmed the United States and its allies, leading to a more confrontational stance.
The trade war initiated by the Trump administration was a clear sign of the deteriorating relationship between the two countries. Tariffs and sanctions have disrupted global supply chains and damaged both economies. While the US-China rivalry dominates headlines, the relationship between Russia and the West has also deteriorated to a point not seen since the Cold War.
Under Vladimir Putin, Russia has embraced authoritarianism and sought to restore its influence. The annexation of Crimea and the conflict in eastern Ukraine are clear examples.
NATO, formed during the Cold War, now finds itself confronting Russia again. The alliance has strengthened its presence in Eastern Europe to reassure allies. Section 3. Tinderboxes of tension, regional flashpoints. While the US-China rivalry and the Russia-West standoff represent the most significant geopolitical fault lines, they are not the only potential triggers for a wider conflict.
Several regional hotspots around the world could escalate rapidly, drawing in major powers and igniting a global conflagration. These tinderboxes of tension are often characterized by a complex web of historical grievances, territorial disputes, religious animosities, and competition for resources.
The South China Sea, with its overlapping territorial claims and vital shipping lanes, remains a potential flashpoint. China's increasingly assertive posture, coupled with US naval operations in the region, creates a constant risk of miscalculation.
A minor incident at sea, a miscommunication, or an accident could quickly escalate into a larger confrontation, drawing in regional actors like Vietnam, the Philippines, and Japan.
The Middle East, long a cauldron of instability, remains a volatile region. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict, the Syrian civil war, the rivalry between Saudi Arabia and Iran, and the ongoing chaos in Yemen all have the potential to spill over into a wider conflict.
The presence of US military bases, the importance of oil supplies, and the involvement of external powers like Russia and Turkey make this region particularly combustible.
The global economy on edge. The global economy, once a symbol of progress, has become a source of profound anxiety.
Globalization and free trade created dependencies and vulnerabilities. Like a house of cards, the global economy is susceptible to shocks and disruptions.
The 2008 financial crisis was a stark reminder of this interconnected nature. The crisis spread rapidly, leading to bank failures and a deep recession.
The COVID-19 pandemic exposed the fragility of supply chains and international cooperation.
The pandemic has exacerbated inequalities, fueling social unrest and political instability. Section 2, Trade Wars, Weaponizing Interdependence. In an interconnected world, trade has become both a source of prosperity and a potential weapon of war.
For decades, the expansion of global trade, driven by technological advancements and the lowering of trade barriers, has lifted millions out of poverty and fostered economic growth. However, this interdependence has also created new vulnerabilities and fueled tensions between nations.
The trade war between the United States and China, initiated during the Trump administration and continuing in various forms under the Biden administration, is a prime example of how economic interdependence can be weaponized. Tariffs, sanctions, and other trade barriers have disrupted global supply chains, raised prices for consumers, and damaged businesses on both sides of the Pacific.
Beyond the immediate economic impact, trade wars have broader geopolitical implications. They erode trust between nations, fuel nationalism and protectionism, and undermine the rules-based international trading system. When countries view trade as a zero-sum game, where one country's gain is another's loss, the likelihood of conflict increases.
The trade war between the US and China is just one example of a broader trend towards economic decoupling and the formation of competing economic blocs. Section 3, the thirst for resources, a zero-sum game. As the global population grows, so does the demand for essential resources like water, food, energy, and minerals.
This competition, in a world grappling with climate change, can fuel conflict within and between nations. Water scarcity, driven by drought and population growth, is a major issue in many parts of the world.
Disputes over access to water sources are likely to intensify. Control of energy resources has been a source of conflict for decades.
The Middle East, with its vast oil reserves, has faced wars and instability fueled by resource competition.
Section 4, the Great Divide, inequality as a catalyst for conflict. While economic interdependence has created unprecedented levels of global wealth, it has also fueled a dramatic rise in inequality, both within and between countries.
This growing divide between the haves and the have-nots is a major source of social and political instability, creating fertile ground for extremism, populism, and conflict. Within countries, rising inequality erodes social cohesion, fuels resentment, and undermines trust in institutions.
When a small elite controls a disproportionate share of wealth and power, while a large segment of the population struggles to make ends meet, the social contract frays and the risk of unrest and violence increases.
Between countries, vast disparities in wealth and development fuel resentment and create a sense of injustice. Developing countries, often burdened by poverty, debt, and the legacy of colonialism, may view the global economic order as rigged against them, leading to frustration and anger.
This resentment can be exploited by extremist groups and authoritarian leaders who offer simplistic solutions based on nationalism, xenophobia, and violence. The digital divide, which separates those with access to technology and information from those without, further exacerbates existing inequalities.
In an increasingly digital world, access to the internet, mobile phones, and other technologies is essential for education, employment, and political participation.
Section 1, the digital battlefield cyber warfare and its implications. The 21st century has witnessed a profound shift in the nature of warfare, with cyberspace as a new domain of conflict.
Wars are now waged in the digital realm, targeting critical infrastructure and financial systems. Cyber warfare, with its potential for anonymity and disruption, blurs the lines between peace and war.
Cyber attacks can be launched with ease and at low cost, making them attractive tools for various actors. A single hacker can potentially cripple a nation's power grid or disrupt financial markets.
The anonymity of cyberspace creates a dangerous environment of suspicion and mistrust. Cyber attacks can have cascading effects, spreading rapidly across borders and disrupting global systems.
A cyber attack on a major financial institution could trigger a global financial crisis, while an attack on a power grid could plunge regions into darkness. The potential for unintended consequences and escalation is high as countries struggle to defend against this new form of aggression.
The rise of cyber warfare has created new challenges for international law and norms. Existing treaties and conventions are ill-equipped to address the unique challenges posed by cyber attacks. The attribution problem makes it difficult to hold perpetrators accountable and deters retaliation.
The international community is still grappling with how to regulate cyber warfare and prevent it from spiraling out of control. The rise of the machines, autonomous weapons, and the future of warfare. As AI advances, so does its application in warfare.
Autonomous weapons capable of engaging targets without human intervention are a rapidly approaching reality. These systems raise profound ethical, legal, and strategic questions.
Proponents argue they offer advantages over human soldiers. Machines are not susceptible to fear or fatigue, reducing mistakes.
They could also reduce casualties with greater precision.
Critics argue these systems pose an unacceptable risk. Unintended consequences, like targeting civilians, are a concern.
Removing human judgment from warfare is morally repugnant.
The development of these systems raises fundamental questions. Who is responsible for the actions of these machines? Can a machine be held accountable for war crimes? These are urgent questions for the international community. Technological innovation in warfare is a double-edged sword. New weapons systems can enhance security, but also increase the risk of accidental war.
The speed of modern warfare compresses decision-making time, raising the risk of misinterpretation. Nuclear weapons remain a major threat, with risks of terrorism or accidental war.
AI in military decision-making raises concerns about unintended consequences. Nationalism and the fragmentation of the global order. The 21st century is increasingly defined by a resurgence of nationalism, fracturing the international order.
Nationalist sentiments prioritize narrow self-interest over international cooperation, undermining peace and prosperity.
Fueled by economic anxieties and cultural insecurities, nationalism manifests in protectionist policies and rejection of multilateralism.
Strongman leaders exploit nationalist sentiments to consolidate power and justify aggressive policies.
The consequences of resurgent nationalism are profound, eroding trust and hampering global cooperation. It undermines efforts to address global challenges like climate change and terrorism. The siren song of populism, channeling anger and discontent.
In an era marked by economic inequality and rapid technological change, populism has emerged as a potent political force offering simplistic solutions.
Like a siren song, populism lures with promises of restoring prosperity, often at the expense of reason and democratic values.
Populist leaders portray themselves as outsiders, fighting elites. They appeal to those feeling left behind by globalization and change.
They scapegoat minorities, fueling division and polarization.
While challenging entrenched interests, populism often undermines democracy. It erodes trust in media and judiciary, promoting intolerance.
Populist leaders exhibit authoritarian tendencies, seeking to centralize power. They silence dissent and control information flow. Section 3, the Iron Fist authoritarianism's resurgence and its global implications.
The 21st century has witnessed a troubling resurgence of authoritarianism, characterized by the concentration of power, suppression of dissent, and erosion of civil liberties.
Like an iron fist crushing freedoms, authoritarian regimes prioritize state control over citizens' rights.
Economic inequality, social instability, and technological advancements fuel this trend, challenging the liberal international order.
Authoritarian regimes often exhibit aggressive foreign policies, seeking to expand their influence and secure resources.
They engage in disinformation campaigns and cyber attacks to undermine opponents and sow discord.
Forming alliances with other authoritarian regimes, they challenge democratic norms and values. Section 4, a world divided, the erosion of shared values and the rise of identity politics. The post-Cold War era, once characterized by optimism about democracy, is giving way to a more fractured and polarized world, marked by the erosion of common ground and the rise of identity politics.
As societies become more diverse, they also become more fragmented, with people retreating into their own tribes.
This fragmentation is fueled by economic inequality, social media echo chambers, and a perceived loss of status.
Political leaders exploit these divisions, pitting groups against each other.
It undermines the sense of shared purpose necessary for democratic societies.
The rise of identity politics has profound implications for social cohesion, political discourse, and international relations.
It makes compromise and consensus building more difficult as groups prioritize their own narrow interests over the common good.
And it can lead to a more volatile and unpredictable international environment, as nations defined by narrow identities are more likely to perceive threats and act aggressively.
In a world increasingly defined by division and polarization, the need for dialogue, understanding, and shared values has never been greater. As the world grapples with the complexities of the 21st century, the ghosts of wars past loom large, offering cautionary tales for navigating international relations.
History may not repeat itself verbatim, but it often rhymes, revealing patterns that help us understand present conflicts.
The echoes of past conflicts, particularly the two world wars, remind us of the fragility of peace.
The world wars were the culmination of long-simmering tensions and failures of diplomacy.
They resulted from rising nationalism, economic competition, and imperial ambitions.
Studying these conflicts provides valuable lessons for preventing future catastrophes.
The parallels between today and the period leading up to the world wars are striking.
The rise of nationalism and geopolitical rivalries evoke a sense of déjà vu.
While history may not repeat itself precisely, the similarities demand our attention.
Understanding past mistakes is essential for crafting a peaceful future.
Learning from the failures of diplomacy and the dangers of appeasement can help build a world where dialogue prevails over conflict. The year 1914 stands as a stark reminder of how quickly a seemingly stable world order can crumble into chaos and destruction.
The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand set in motion a chain of events that plunged the world into World War I.
While the assassination was a spark, the tinder had been accumulating for decades. Nationalism, imperial rivalry, and alliances entangled the great powers in a fateful embrace.
Aggressive nationalism in Germany and Austria-Hungary fueled a dangerous sense of entitlement.
The great powers engaged in a reckless arms race, making warfare more deadly.
Alliances meant to maintain balance ironically drew the great powers into conflict.
Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia and Russia mobilized its troops.
Germany declared war on Russia and France.
Great Britain declared war on Germany and the world was at war.
The outbreak of World War II in 1939 stands as a stark reminder of the dangers of appeasement.
The lessons from World War I seem forgotten as Nazi Germany under Hitler embarked on a path of expansionism.
Hitler's rise to power in 1933 marked a turning point. Fueled by a toxic ideology, Hitler rebuilt Germany's military, reoccupied the Rhineland, and annexed Austria.
The Western powers adopted a policy of appeasement, hoping to avoid another war. The invasion of Poland shattered the illusion of peace and plunged the world into conflict. The world stands at a precipice, teetering on the edge of a potential abyss. Geopolitical rivalries, economic instability, and ideological divides create a volatile global landscape.
The prospect of a Third World War casts a long shadow over the 21st century. Yet, there remains hope. We have the power to choose a different path and build a peaceful world.
This requires a shift in mindset, recognizing that our challenges demand collective solutions. The path to peace will not be easy. It requires strong leadership, honest dialogue, and a commitment to common ground.
Cooperation, not conflict, is the only path to lasting security and prosperity. We can choose the path of cooperation and peace, believing in a better future.
The interconnected nature of the 21st century underscores the imperative of cooperation. Global challenges like climate change and terrorism cannot be solved by any one nation alone. They require a coordinated global response transcending traditional rivalries.
Strengthening international institutions like the United Nations is essential. These institutions provide a vital forum for dialogue and peaceful resolution of disputes. They embody a world order based on rules, where cooperation is the norm.
Despite the daunting challenges we face, there is reason for hope. The human capacity for compassion, cooperation, and innovation remains undimmed.
The end of the Cold War demonstrated the transformative power of dialogue and diplomacy.
The global response to the COVID-19 pandemic showed the potential for international cooperation. Scientists collaborated to develop vaccines in record time.
These examples offer a glimmer of hope, reminding us that cooperation is possible.
The choice is ours. We can choose to embrace hope, cooperation, and the belief in a better world. May what we do today bring a brighter, better tomorrow. Thank you so much for watching. For more interesting topics, visit ardels.com, where variety meets in one place.